After the professional experience section, which will make up the majority of the document, there are also several other sections that you'll probably consider adding. And we'll run through these very quickly just to give you a sense of what some of the options are and how we usually format them and what information we include. But as far as which sections you include and how much detail you go into, that will have to be a judgment call based on the client's experience as well as the relevance of all of this information to their target roles. So let's start with the early career section. With the early career section, you'll be outlining roles from much earlier in the client's career. So we're thinking 15, 20 years ago. The important thing is that all of these roles are still relevant and demonstrate their career trajectory. So if someone had internships or very entry-level roles that may almost undermine their credibility, those will want to leave off of the document completely. So you can see in the top example, we include company names, locations, position titles, as well as the dates. It's also perfectly fine if someone does have a lot of experience and we're outlining 25 to 30 years on their resume. It's fine to omit the dates in the early career section. Another section you may want to include for executives is any board memberships that they hold. So if they sit on a board of directors or are a president or a vice president of their university's alumni association, for example, those kind of things can go under the board membership section. So again, you'll want to list their title, the organization name, as well as the dates. If they are active, so you're only listing boards that they are currently actively a part of, you can also consider omitting the dates there. Then we have certifications. So the important thing with certifications is that they are relevant and build the candidate's credibility. So remember that you want to stick to the main ones. A maximum of 4 to 5. Use your best judgment here. The thing we don't want to do is make it seem like the client is just chasing all sorts of credentials. So if they're doing LinkedIn learning courses and several online courses and that type of thing, we'll really want to distill the information into what's most relevant and important to their career. As far as what you put down, definitely the name of the certification or the credential they hold, the issuing organization, and then you can also consider including dates. You can either put this all on one line if you're looking to save space, or you can format it in alignment with the early career section, as we see in the middle example there. And here is just another good example. So someone who is in project management and they're looking to demonstrate the PMP, and sort of their familiarity as a Scrum Master, Lean Six Sigma, Agile methodology, all of that. So you can see that these are pretty recognized certifications and they will help build up the person's credibility, and I think this is a reasonable number to include. We'll also list education. So if someone is an experienced professional, the education section will come toward the bottom of their resume. Whereas if they are a current student or a recent graduate, we'll just put that up at the top. So definitely university name, degree that they earned, we spell everything out here, as well as if they do hold any Latin honors, you'll list those in all lowercase letters next to the name of the degree. You can include graduation dates as well. If university is very well known or the location is quite obvious, you can definitely leave it off. And you can also leave off the graduation dates, especially if you're working with the older candidate who is sort of concerned about age discrimination and all of those things. If someone does hold any awards and honors from their university, you can list these out using bullet points. The one thing I would encourage you to keep in mind is that the further out someone is, and the more they're progressing along with their career, the less relevant these things become. Especially if we're thinking about Greek life and clubs and on-campus leadership positions and all of that, we'll really want to start focusing on the key things that either another alumnus of the university would recognize and be especially impressed with, or that would just be relevant at depending on where they are in their career. Finally, we have relevant skills. So relevant skills, keep in mind you don't want any of these skills to overlap with the key expertise section that we're including at the top of a 2-page document. Most often you'll use relevant skills at the bottom of a 1-page resume. And what we want to list out here are technical skills, so software skills, and then hard skills that are relevant to the person's profession. In particular, what you'll want to do is take a look at the skills that are required on the job description, and if they do mention any specific software programs or Excel modeling abilities, that sort of thing, definitely be sure to highlight those if they're not already mentioned in another portion of the document. And I know sometimes it can seem a little bit obvious, right, to be mentioning things such as Microsoft Word, because nowadays companies sort of expect all employees to be familiar with that software. But just for ATS optimization purposes and to make things explicitly clear, always be sure to put that down. Then community involvement and volunteer work. You can list that on the resume, include the organization's name, location, title, and so forth. If you wanted to, and they do have significant involvement, you can also include a sentence or a few bullet points there. And I think this section is pretty straightforward, right? And then teaching, speaking engagements, if anyone does lecture at a university, for example, whether they're teaching an entire course or just a few lectures here and there, that can be very valuable information to include. The way in which you present it can vary, so use your best judgment here. It'll also depend on how much space you have available, but generally speaking, what they taught or what the title was and where the lecture or teaching assignment took place. And then you can include the dates as well. So either just the years is fine, or if they were speaking at a conference, for example, or sat on a panel, you can include the specific dates of the conference. And I think that covers the majority of the sections that you may consider including under the professional experience section. As I mentioned, all of these things will really depend on the client's specific experience as well as their target roles. The most important thing to keep in mind is to just make sure that all of the information is relevant and that we're being direct to the point and concise and not just listing out every single training course they did and every single speaking engagement, especially on a 1 or 2 page resume. If you are working with someone who is a professional, for example, and they have an extended academic CV, that's where it would be appropriate to list out all of their presentations, speaking engagements, publications, and so forth. But for the purposes of a standard professional resume, we'll try to keep things as concise as possible.